oh, you'll make it as an artist, but not if you think this. And while you watch me draw this today, we'll discuss every excuse the artist makes. You know, the big ones that you've heard and you've probably said yourself, and by the end of this, I hope you'll realize it's just holding you back. Now, if I got a nickel for every single time that I heard this excuse, I would have my own castle made of solid nickels. So are you somebody who doesn't live in a superpower country? Are you somebody that lives maybe outside the US or outside of Europe or outside any nation right now that doesn't have a booming economy? Are you somebody who says to yourself that I'll never be able to make it as an artist because I live in the Philippines, because I live in Brazil, because I live in Africa, because I live in South America, because you live here or there, right? And if you're somebody who's telling yourself this right now, I need to just honestly just let you know that doesn't matter anymore unless, did you somehow time travel here from the 1600s? Because y'all, if you are somebody who's still telling yourself and convincing yourself that somehow because of the victim of your birth circumstances that you're unable to be an artist, you're depriving the world of your amazing art influence. Okay, my friend? Just to add some credence to this argument, this did used to be the case. It used to be that if you were born outside in this like puny little village and your mom and dad were just like bakers or farmers, yeah, you would have been screwed like probably 100 years ago or so. But that's not been the case, y'all. You are just suffering from what I call being geo-locked at this point. This is when you're also afraid, by the way, to think about how could I possibly charge more? Oh no, well, I live in Thailand and the standard of living is so low here and everybody makes so little. And so I can only charge $10, $15 for my artwork. Meanwhile, these big boys in the US, they can be charging hundreds of dollars. No, friend, you can too. The only reason that you think that is because you're negatively comparing yourself to somebody that's born somewhere, but realistically, nobody cares. Yo, I have been contacted hundreds of times to do work for people. Nobody has ever asked, where do you live? Nobody cares. It doesn't matter. Nobody cares if you live in Antarctica. Nobody cares if you live on the moon. Nobody will care except for one person in this world, you. Oh, and you know who will also help to reinforce this? Everybody around you. Oh, we don't do that around here. People from where we grow up, we don't do this. I could also just neatly package this into your socioeconomics too, friend. Are you somebody that's like, oh, well, I was born too poor, or people around me don't do this or don't do that? Well, let me just reframe you. What if you could kill it? What if you could make it? Even if your standard of living is so low, that's just because you haven't figured yet that you can participate in the global economy. There is a global standard for how much artists can charge and should make. But that is a really toxic thing for you to somehow degrade your skill and your valid efforts into just what you think your economy is when you're just trapped in your own wallet, when you've been conditioned to think less of yourself because of what people around you do or don't make. Nobody cares, friend, except for you. But what if you could break that abusive cycle that you've trapped yourself into? Because that would be game changing. I know artists who are living it up big in Thailand, who can literally live for months off of a couple $100. That could be you. Now, I bet that you consider that there is one major force that governs whether or not you can or you can't, whether or not you're going to be able to, whether or not you're ever going to be competitive enough. And tell me, are you somebody who is afraid of the amount of time that you have, all right? Are you somebody that's a parent? Are you somebody that is a caretaker for somebody? Are you somebody who's too young? You think you're too young, or are you somebody that thinks you're too old? Are you somebody that works a full-time job and now you're just like, well, I guess I can't be an artist because I don't have 8 hours a day? Well, listen, that's okay. And the reason that this becomes a massive excuse for so many artists, and I'm going to say very, very confidently right now, that if you're somebody that's complaining about the amount of time you have, the real issue here isn't your time, it's your toxic relationship with time, okay? If you're not aware of this, the average person wastes about 2 hours a day according to studies. And in that, I want to just propel this notion is that it's not that you don't have time, it's just that you don't have a more valuable resource I want to uncover with you. So as we go through what you're actually doing with your time, how you're using your time, and what most people do with their time, you're generally going to notice that there's always pockets and always gaps. And the thing that I want to let you know is that as somebody who is extremely busy, and I'm speaking from the perspective of somebody who is a full-time employee, who also runs a part-time art business, who also runs a mentorship, who also runs a YouTube channel. Oh, and I'm also a parent and a husband too. With all of those obligations, I still manage to fit 15 to 20 hours of working time into my art businesses. And with that being said, I can definitely identify this, is that you need to really take a look at where are your fluff times, and you know it. I mean, come on, you really, really know it. And you can identify where your dead zones are. Be honest with yourself. How well are you using a more valuable resource called focus? When you're doing the things that you need to do, how much focused effort are you putting into this? Because if you're not actually doing what you say you need to do and putting your best into every moment that you have, that's why you're complaining that you don't have time for it. Or are you somebody that's afflicted by FOMO and you're looking around to everybody else, and then that starts to develop a weird sense of entitlement, like, oh, well, I deserve to do this and I deserve to do that. Well, the way that I also want to promote this is like, well, don't you deserve to be happy? Don't you deserve to be successful? Don't you deserve to feel fulfilled? Why don't you deserve that? But somehow you deserve to play 15 hours of video games this week. Or you had to binge that entire new Netflix season in 3 days. Why do you deserve that, but you don't deserve to do anything meaningful? Because nobody's gonna care what you played or watched in like 10 years. Nobody will care, including you. And if you're concerned too, that maybe you think that you don't have enough time on this earth life, you're too old, or you're thinking you're too young, or you were born in the wrong period. Okay, well, let's take a look at that, because honestly, the issue isn't time, because time is gonna go by. I just wanna let you know, friend, time doesn't care about you, but you should. And the same amount of time it's gonna take you to maybe succeed, or maybe try, or maybe even get your foothold on what you wanna do, that time is going to pass by anyways. And then in that case, if you don't go for it, then you're just gonna be older, and you're gonna be grouchier, and you're gonna be more miserable, and you're gonna feel like more of a failure, and you're gonna have less time to do anything about it. Why? Just because you were too afraid to take those steps. So what if you just did it anyways? Now, another really bad excuse you're gonna find is that you don't really know where to find good information. And for you, my friend, please go ahead and hit that like and subscribe, because listen, I am gonna be here for you every step of your artistic journey, and I would love for you to learn how to grow into the best artist you possibly can. I'm gonna be here for you for that. But what I'm not gonna be here for is to allow you to fall into this big excuse. Now, for all the freelancers in the house, this one goes out to you. So tell me this. Do you regularly have clients, or do you even have clients that maybe like to purchase your merchandise, or maybe they purchase your courses, or maybe they're just a really avid supporter on your Patreon or anything like that? Or maybe you're just starting out and you're happy with the people that have supported you so far, even though they're not really giving you too much. And one of the most common excuses that I deal with, especially like when I work with people in my mentorship, is that they're gonna be afraid of losing their clients. So let me ask you, are you afraid to lose everybody? Like, what if tomorrow you just woke up and like nobody that you have that you know right now ever bought from you again? Does that trigger you? Does that just induce intense anxiety and dread from you too? Do you think that like, well, now if they left, oh my God, nobody will ever buy from me. I'll never find that. I have to start all over again. Well, let me just put this into a different perspective from you. Because oftentimes, whenever people are feeling this way, the issue isn't that they're afraid of losing their clients. It's generally that they're afraid of losing comfort. Comfort in knowing that somebody is supporting them. And generally too, though, the people that are afraid of losing their clients are also the ones that aren't being treated well by their clients. And I don't mean that it's not that they don't say please and thank you. I mean that you're undercharging yourself and they're okay with it. And there's this weird kind of toxic relationship I notice that artists and clients have together sometimes, where if an artist is undercharging themselves and devaluing their work and their commitment, and they somehow think that they're gonna feel bad. Are you like this? Are you somebody that's like, man, I wish I could charge more, but I feel so bad about it. I don't think I can do that. I don't feel like I could do that. Well, my friend, I just want to let you know your feelings are betraying you, and your clients aren't the ones that are gonna support you long term. Like, just to put this out there, like if the max that you're able to get right now is $50, first off, good for you. You're hustling, you're starting out. But do you imagine yourself still making that sum of money every single time that you do an artwork 5 years from right now? Because if you're afraid of losing that, let me just explain this to you really succinctly. Your clients are just okay with abusing you for a long period of time. And I'm just gonna put it out to you like this. Like, would you stay in an abusive relationship with somebody for 5 years? Would you stay with somebody who doesn't value? Would you stay with somebody that degrades you? Would you stay with somebody that isn't faithful to you? Because in the same sense, I just want to put it to you like this. A lot of times, especially when you're freelancing, you have to be okay with losing your current clients. Because oftentimes, what I have found definitely in my experiences is that when I lose certain clients, it opens a door to a better client. And from saying no to certain people, you have to learn that that invites other people to say yes to you. And it's more important that people say yes to you than you have to people please yourself into a lower status position that is not gonna help and support you. It's not gonna help you grow, friend. It's just an excuse because you feel nervous, you feel anxious, you feel dread over the fact that you might have to be with somebody else and you might get rejected from it. So I just want to put that out there. That's the real issue. It's not that you're afraid of losing your client, you're afraid of rejection. But listen, friend, if you're closing 100% of your sales, or if you're closing honestly more than 50% of your inquiries, you're charging too little. Is that a shocking statistic? Because any good salesman will tell you that statistic. And honestly, I think that if you're getting less than 50%, that means that you are somebody that really respects yourself too. And just to put it in perspective for you, like if you only get 40% of your shots and you are in the NBA, you're a top tier player. So for you to think that you have to hit every single shot that you take with a client, that's not a manageable expectation, friend. And I really hope that you'll learn that you have to be okay with leaving certain people that came into your life at a certain season of it in order to make room for the next season of growth. Can you do that? Oh, now this one really grinds my gears, and it should for you too. And I gotta say, I'm so sick of hearing this online. And I wanna say that ever since I started my freelance business, I have been devoted to achieving success in the complete absence of this force. And tell me, have you been fed the lie that you must have social media followings in order to be successful? Are you somebody that's like, oh man, nobody will buy my work. I'm not gonna get any eyes on this. No one's gonna have any interest in me. No one's gonna wanna buy from me. No one's gonna think I'm legit. Or are you thinking that like, oh, well, if I don't have a following, then nobody's ever gonna reach out to me. I'm never gonna have any prospects. I'm never gonna have any potential in this. False, false, false. All lies. And I fully understand why this has happened, and I've actually gone over and made an entire video about how art YouTube has spread some of the worst lies to the art community and failed us all. And this is one of the big ones, is that you don't need a social media following. No, friend, you don't. It's okay. If you're somebody, especially in these current times, that doesn't want to accrue all these eyes and lurkers and all of these people that honestly don't care about your artwork that much, if you're somebody that's trapped in that bottle, let me just pull the cork out and release you. You don't, friend. If you want proof of this, let me just put some stake in the matter here. I make $3,000 to $5,000 a month on my art business, and I have a pitiful social media following. Like, I have less than 1,000 followers on every platform. I do have obviously a much more significant number here on YouTube, but I'm gonna tell you, over the course of 4 years of being on this channel for you right now, I've gotten one commission off of it, and that's it. And that was super rare, and this is not what my channel's devoted to either. So that was a total curveball for me. But for you, friend, I just need to let you know this, that people get art jobs all the time, and they look at not your social media following, they look at your artwork. They look at your portfolio. Yes, some people do get reached out to from social media, but it's a micro percentage of it. Yes, some people do get offered certain things, but it's a micro percentage of it. And if you're somebody that wants to wholly dedicate yourself towards being a content creator, that's great, but declare that. That is a very different job field, and it's not something that is, I would say, either aligned nor is it analogous to what the duties, responsibilities, and daily tasks are for an artist. because it's a whole different style of creation. And it's not going to help you, especially if you're just starting out, especially if you're in the middle season of your art career here. Instead, it's going to distract you because you're going to spend a whole lot of time trying to figure out audiences and people, and a lot less time on actually doing a thing that you actually love and you want to get recognized for, which is your artwork. And just to put some meat on the bones of this argument right here, I want to just clearly let you know that you will never monetize anything that you're trying to do with less than 50,000 followers, subscribers, because literally the smallest fraction of them, like 10% of them at max, will actually potentially be your customer base. So you need a massive one. So it just doesn't make sense. Like, how many people are actually able to achieve this, and how easy is it? Because honestly, if it was easy and clearly outlined and there was actually a solid structure to do it, everybody would do it, but there's not. And how many artists feel dejected and have quit their art because they felt like they couldn't get a social media presence, and then therefore they adopted that as their failure identity and the reason why. So if you're making this excuse, friend, just stop. Yes, there are some things that are going to help you. Like, there are certain comics and certain publishers that won't publish your stuff unless you have that presence. In that case, that's probably what you want to do. Yes, if you want to sell a product, you do need an audience for it. Yes, that can help you. But way more art jobs exist and way more possibilities exist than you needing any type of social media presence for it. So no, friend, this is just an excuse. You don't need to do it, and it's okay. Now, on the topic of selling your stuff, man, this one comes up all the time. And I mean, like, every few years, somebody is going to say this. So are you somebody that thinks that you're not doing well because there's a bad economy? Yeah, because at the time of recording this right now, there is a pretty bad economy. Of course, that depends on where you are in the world. But like in the US, economy's not that great, all right? And I recognize that. That's definitely the case. But I want to let you know that nobody cares about that. And that's a really lame excuse for you, because here's the reason why. Because if you're complaining about the fact that there's a bad economy, and are you telling yourself, are you telling other people, or are you in crowds of people that are saying, well, nobody will buy my product at this price point, or I can't sell for this, or I can't get clients for that because there's just nobody that wants to buy my stuff, or, people are being more conservative. Or here's a really rich one too, pun intended, is around right now, I'm recording this around Christmas time. Are you somebody that's like, oh man, holidays coming up? Yeah, I think people's purse strings are just a little bit tighter around here. People closing up their wallets a little bit more, skinnier wallets right around now. All of that, it doesn't matter. Okay. And I'm somebody, by the way, who's been freelancing for over a decade. I've been able to grow my pricing from $30 when I first started out. Okay. And now I can get upwards of $1,500 and anywhere in between. And my minimum pricing for any project that I do is no less than $300. And the way I've been able to do that is by completely ignoring this and just understanding this. You have to stop again thinking that somehow because of your local economics, the areas that you currently live in, or the people that you currently discuss the bad economy with, are the people that are going to buy your stuff. Because you need to participate in the global market. One of the coolest things, honestly, about freelancing and about you having the ability to make money online as an artist in this current era is the fact that people will buy from all over the world. And you want to know the best part of that is? People have money all over the world, even in bad economies. Everywhere around the world, there are people with money. Just to put this in perspective for y'all, there are 8 billion people on planet Earth. That means that there are millions and millions of people who could be your prospective customer, who could be your prospective supporter, your prospective patron. However, though, you telling yourself that is honestly you just giving yourself permission to fail and permission to pump the brakes and permission to underachieve. And I've been there too. That's why I'm definitely saying this, okay? I've been through the last bad economy that was around 10 years ago. Guess what's gonna happen in 10 more years? We're gonna have another bad economy, and artists will still make it, and artists will still break out, and artists will still price themselves better than you. So you can't keep telling yourself that, friend. Just because you know people that have fallen on hard times doesn't mean that you have to fall on hard times, doesn't mean that everybody has fallen on hard times, because there is money literally oozing out of every pocket of the world. And by you tapping into that, it doesn't matter. Does that rock your world or what? Because it definitely did for me. Now, similar to the excuse on social media and the need for it, I'm gonna go on a limb and say that you might have heard or you might have even said this, all right? Tell me if this is you. Have you ever said to yourself that, well, nobody likes my stuff because it's not popular? Have you ever said, well, I don't do this, I don't do that, I don't do not safe for work, I don't do fan art, I don't do furry work, I don't do fantasy, or I don't do this, or I don't do that? Are you somebody that's like, well, man, if I don't do that, nobody will see my stuff and nobody will ever appreciate me and nobody will ever buy from me. And I only like this, and therefore that's the only thing that I can and should do. Well, if that's you, friend, congratulations. You have successfully convinced yourself out of actually pursuing the thing that matters, which is your passion. My friend, I just want to let you know this. People don't care that much about the content of what you're creating, okay? People care first and foremost about the human experience that you are delivering through your artwork. Because in the mode of artwork, and it does not matter what version of artwork, what field of artwork that you're associated with, even if it's more commercially based, the number one thing that people want to get from you is that human connection, because art is literally a form of communication, and that is sorely missed and overlooked, and we're too much into monetizing everything and making it into a product. We forget the nature of art. People do not care that much about the content. They care about the process. They care about the effort that you put into it. This is why people that use AI art, their stuff is wholly disregarded and will never ascend to the level of actual human creation because it's low effort and it's low interest. And all of this neatly packs itself into what's called a value perception. And the number one thing that you really need to get behind is the idea that people buy your artwork, or people have interest in artwork where they can see passion. So let me just try and strongly convey this to you, friend. You will succeed 50 times more off of doing the things that you are actually passionate and actually interested about, rather than you doing the opposite and you're chasing this trend and that trend and this is popular and everybody's drawing this character and now it's Boozette, Bowsette, and the Jacko challenge and whatever the heck comes out next. Instead of doing that, what if you just locked into the things that you want? Because in the other sense, you're just trying to hop on board of a train that's overcrowded. And you're not chasing popularity, you're not chasing any fame, you're not chasing any type of success, you're not chasing a better life, you're chasing authenticity. And for you as an artist, is that really what you want to do? Because I've talked to people that make hundreds and thousands of dollars off of doing some of the weirdest and strangest stuff that I would have never known. Like, there are people that make six-figure incomes off of painting Warhammer figures. There are people that make 3D battle sets for Warhammer and for Dungeons and Dragon players. I've even talked to people that make hundreds of dollars off of like Digimon commissions, and I was like, Digimon? I didn't even know that was that popular. Wow, that's amazing. So just think about it like this. You can make it, you can do whatever you want, but you will not make it, and you will definitely not sustain yourself, and you will definitely only be miserable chasing something that you don't actually want to catch. Have you ever considered that? Now, I've been hearing these arguments go around for a while, and I really need to dismiss every single one of them, and I'm gonna try and destroy it all through this one segment here. So I hear this two ways, so buckle up for this ride. Have you ever heard anybody tell you that you can't make it because of the medium that you're using? Are you somebody that's saying, well, you can't do anything if you're not using digital art? You can't do anything at all unless you're drawing in this program or that program. Or you can't make it unless you're doing this 3D program or that one. Or on the flip side, are you saying nowadays that, well, because AI image generation is a thing, now you have to make it in traditional because it can just take over that sphere, and it hasn't. But you're thinking that because of the medium that you have chosen or haven't chosen, that has just screwed you. Let me just put this all to bed right now. Whenever there has been any type of revolution, and this even goes back to Photoshop, it goes back to photography, the biggest issue that came about then is that there was no direct way to access a customer base, okay? Even with AI image generation, now somehow seeming like a threat, which it's really not that much, everybody, so just calm down on that note, okay? I've got loads of videos to put that to bed for you to make you feel at ease. But I've noticed it in two extreme ways, where people think that because they're not a digital artist that they can't make it, but that's not the case, y'all. Like, I literally follow people on Instagram that have hundreds and thousands of followers who literally paint, or they use gouache, or they just draw, or they paint, and they have done and continue to be a phenomenal success. And that can be you too. And ever since AI came out, I've also seen all the traditional art snobs somehow come out from like their 30-year slumber and hiatus, now coming out and saying to digital artists that we need to hop off the digital art train and go back to traditional art because digital art isn't real art, which, hey, I don't know where you've been hibernating for the last 30 years, but that argument's dead in the water and it's wholly untrue. And if you still think that, I don't know what time machine you just popped out of, but please go back to your original era, friend, you're lost. But overall, it does not matter what medium you use. It matters what you do with it. It matters what you're actually pursuing with it. It matters how you present it. It matters how you can tap into that, because nowadays there is a direct line to customers that you can get to. If you're wanting to do this professionally, you can access that. There are lots of modes. There are lots of platforms that you can get into. There are lots of things that you can do that will allow you to directly tap into that customer base. And 30 years ago, when Photoshop came out, that did not exist. Now there is. You can, as an artist, directly hit the audience that you want to with very few barriers in between you and them. And that's amazing. And that's only going to continue to happen when we rely less on corporations and the creator economy continues to blossom the way it currently is. So for you thinking that because you only do this and because you only do that, my friend, that's absolutely not true. And you can make it, whether or not you're doing it traditionally or you're doing it in a newer form, you will make it, friend. Now, this next topic, I'm gonna approach real gently for you, and I have a lot of personal experience in this matter that I wanna present to you. And one of the biggest things that I hear artists make an excuse for is overall themselves being a wreck. And I don't know why this is like a romanticized image of artists, but it's also a really damaging stereotype. And on this note too, specifically what I'm talking about is when I start to hear artists make any type of excuse for why they can't succeed, and it typically draws back to a diagnosis. And on this note, are you somebody that maybe is neurodivergent? Are you somebody that has ADHD, or you struggle with depression, or you have intense anxiety? And then typically, what I also tend to notice, I see this in the comments in my videos sometimes too, is people will say, well, I can't focus, I can't concentrate, I can't do this and I can't do that because of X, Y, and Z. My friend, I just want to let you know this. You have a diagnosis, not a death sentence, okay? Just because you have that concern, it doesn't mean that it damns you to mediocrity and to quitting and less than, okay? And one of the biggest things that I think that artists misunderstand about themselves, and especially about their diagnosis, is that it's not that you're unable to, it's just that you have a different instruction manual for how you need to operate. There's a way for you to be extremely successful, for you to achieve the things you want to do in spite of what you're currently struggling with, okay? And just because you're not neurotypical, just because you have different social emotional needs than other people, does not mean that you're therefore less than or deficient in your character, okay? It's just kind of like this. It's like you have an instruction manual that maybe is a little bit longer than somebody else, and it takes a little bit more time to read than somebody else. But it's not you are not a problem. You were made exactly the way that you were supposed to be made, and you are great the way that you are. But one of the worst things that I tend to notice is that people in white coats tend to tell you that there's something wrong with you, and they set limitations on what you can and you can't do. And this is something that I personally experienced because I had all these diagnoses when I was a kid, and I was diagnosed with ADHD and a bunch of other stuff like that. And honestly, I was always told, I can't do this, I can't do that. I think like this, I don't think like that. Or I would do this, or I can't do that. And one of the things that I always notice is that people are so quick to grab onto a label for why they can't succeed. But I promise you this, if you actually looked around, you'd find somebody who's doing tremendously well, struggling with a worse version of whatever you currently have, friend, okay? And so what I wanna let you know is that it's not a deficiency, and that is honestly a pretty horrible thing that we tend to do, especially just with some of the terms and diagnoses that we have. We tend to associate it with a character or a human deficiency, but my friend, you're not deficient. You're not devoid of anything. You have a unique set of abilities that other people don't have. Like, just for example, if you have ADHD It's not that you can't focus, it's that you can't focus on things that you deem irrelevant or uninteresting. And you also have a superpower, my friend. Did you know that? It's called hyperfocus. So people with ADHD are able to hyperfocus, which means that you can literally lock in at extreme levels for long extended periods of time. Sometimes you can't even control it. That's amazing. Like, is that not perfect for artistry? So for you, therefore, to weaponize your mental health against yourself, what good is that doing for you, friend? It's just hurting you, and it's giving you permission to achieve less than you want and to do less than what you want, friend. And I just want to ask you, is that really what you want to do? Does that really need to be your story, friend? Because I think that you have a great story, but you just need to keep writing it. And I promise you this, if you find a community and you find a group of people out there who will help support you in what you do and not tell you you can't do this, but will help to give you the tools and explanations for how to proceed forward with it, you will do everything that you want. And isn't that really what you want? Or do you want to continue to hold yourself back? Because it's a choice. Now, as an art educator, this one gets to me all the time. And I hear this excuse way too often. I hear it from everybody from children to adults. And let me just ask you this. How do you decide that you're done with an artwork? How do you declare that you're finished with it? And here's what I all too often hear, and I want to give you a better version of it here. All too often, we typically say, I'm done. And that comes from an emotional place, but not an intellectual place. And what I mean by that is that oftentimes we declare our doneness not from a place of feeling actually completed with it, but because of emotional frustration. And is this you? Are you the person that's just like, I'm done with this? And honestly, like, I hate that phrase. And literally, like, if I have a student that's like, I'm done with this, I'm done working on this, I'm just done with it. I'm like, hey, do you hear yourself right now? Like, is this an intellectual decision or an emotional decision? Did you complete the task that you set out? Or did you just give up because you feel overwhelmed? And if you feel overwhelmed, you're feeling emotional, that's okay. But let me just say this, that's a huge red flag. Like, if you ever utter that phrase to yourself, I really want you to just recognize that is just you giving in. And it's okay that you feel that way. I'm not demonizing you. I'm not putting you down for it either. But I just want to let you know that that's not the correct signal and that's not the right completion point that you want to go through. So instead, what I'm going to encourage you is to work like this. Before you declare your doneness, or let's just call it what it is, it's complete. One of the first things you need to do is hit a target, okay? You need to identify what your targets are. And typically, whenever I work with people in my mentorship, what I'll do is I'll sit down with them, and when we're starting out an artwork and I'm reviewing it with them, I'll be like, hey, what are these 3 things? And typically I'll go through, okay, what's the focus? What's the mood of this piece? And what's something new that you're learning that you want to try with this one? And if you're not designing any targets, then what are you done with? It's like you saying that you ran a marathon when all you did was you ran blindfolded somewhere around your neighborhood and you decided that you just didn't want to run anymore. It just doesn't make any sense. So instead of you just making the emotional declaration, I'm done, why don't you instead design yourself a really great program and a really great set of targets to hit. And then you will actually be done. And then, how about this? What if instead of you walking away from your artwork saying, man, that's the same as all the other ones, I don't see any growth, I don't see any progress. But is that really that much of a mystery? Why? Because if you're just making art blindly, of course you feel that way. You see that? Now this one really gets to me, and I hear this promoted all the time, way too often, and I'm gonna explain to you why this is such an ill-suited topic for a large majority of you artists out here, especially y'all trying to hustle and make this your full-time thing. So one of the biggest things that I hear every major art YouTuber promote, and not just art YouTubers, but every major influencer, they're gonna tell you, you gotta have passive income. You gotta make money while you sleep. You gotta make that thing that people are just gonna eat up like hotcakes, and you are just gonna wake up and you're gonna get ding, ding, ding from your bank account, and you're just gonna wake up and see a whole bunch more zeros at the end of your bank statement every single month because you've got people buying stuff from you all over the world and you don't have to do anything for it. You just create this course and people will buy it. Just create a Patreon, people are gonna support you. Listen, y'all, I want to explain why this is the most fruitless labor that most of you are going to go through. And it's not because it's a bad idea, but because it's a wretched idea for most of you, because you're entering and trying to do that at the worst season. And there are certain things that you should do at certain seasons, okay? However, though, you being told that you need a passive income before an active income is a really ill-advised concept. And here's why. Because honestly, if people aren't gonna appreciate you enough to support your active efforts, they're not going to support your passive efforts. And I've fallen in the trap too. Listen, y'all, like years ago, I made a Patreon and surprise, surprise, nobody bought into it. I had clients at the time. I had people that kind of liked my stuff on social media. Nobody cared. And I looked at that as a defeat back then, but I look at it nowadays and I'm like, well, that was really stupid, Sean. Why the heck did you do that? Of course they wouldn't buy it, because we're sold this romanticized image that you are not good or you're doing something wrong if you're not making money while you sleep. But honestly, if you're not making money while you're awake, you're not going to make money while you sleep either. So the first thing that you need to focus on are your active labors, on the active pursuits that you're doing, on the active tasks that are actively going to bring you the success that you want. People have to appreciate your active pursuits long before they're going to even consider appreciating any of your passive ones on that one. Like just as an example here, before I was monetized on YouTube, it took me a year and a half to make any type of content that would attract the number of people and the amount of watch hours and time. It took me 2 years to even like make that anything worthwhile. And it's okay for you to just labor over the things you want to, because that's really where your heart is. And if you're somebody like me, you probably love what you're laboring over too. And if you don't love what you're laboring over, here's the big takeaway. You're not ever gonna sustain yourself with it. You're not gonna make it, because if you reject and if you resent the thing that you say that you want to make passive income on, it's gonna come through. You're gonna come off like a phony, friend. Have you ever considered this, or have you ever fallen into this trap? Now, as artists, we have a lot of things that we have to learn and understand, right? We got to understand so many foundations, so many basics, so many things that you got to learn, you got to be really proficient with, right? And tell me this, have you ever said to yourself, I'd be better if I practiced this, or I need to practice that, or I need to make more heads, I need to make more hands, I need to make more folds, I need to make more landscapes, I need to practice more of this, I need to practice more of that. Listen, it's definitely necessary for you to practice. It's definitely necessary to get those reps in. But listen, if you put in all those reps and you never play the game, nobody cares, and you won't either. So one of the biggest excuses I find artists make is that they aren't practicing enough. And tell me down below, have you ever said to yourself, oh, I would be better, but I just need to do this. I need to draw 300 boxes, or I need to draw 500 hands, or I need to make an entire sketchbook of noses or ears or something weird like that, right? Well, here's the thing. That is not actually a good practice whatsoever, okay? If you actually want to take a look at what will actually improve you, you have to initiate this practice called deliberate practice, okay? And that means that you're designing something that's hyper intentional and that's actually going to be well suited to what you're going to do. So let me just put this into a better kind of understanding for you. So let's just say hypothetically that you're like me, you're like a big fantasy artist, okay? And you might be like, man, I'm really janky on my hands. I don't really understand that anatomy, okay? So one of the first things I would do is I would design yourself a project, because I promise you this, you're gonna feel a lot better when you design and you grow through your projects. And just to put this into perspective, I have really not done any practice sketches for over 5 years. Instead, everything I've wanted to practice, I just insert into a project, because then I get a feeling of completeness from it and I get a better sense of fulfillment from it too. I've got like actually an entire artifact of a lot of learning. And so one of the things that I would very much recommend that you do is to start to insert yourself in all of those learning targets into your projects. Now, let's say that you're somebody that's still really learning a lot, okay? You're definitely an earlier season in your art career. So one of the things I recommend you do is, if you do want to practice, you got to make it related to that project. So again, if you're a fantasy artist like me, one of the things I would say is like, okay, well, I don't really understand hands, and I need to understand, how do they look when they hold a sword, or how they look when they hold a bow, or how does it look when they hold an axe? And I would do those hand sets hyper specific to that one type of character, or that one type of pose. Or maybe you want to do hands, but you're drawing magic casters a lot. Okay, so how do hands look when they're casting magic? Do that. Or let's say that you're like, man, I'm really locked down these characters, but I really suck at those backgrounds. Okay, cool. What are the types of backgrounds that you would like to use in your next piece? Okay, cool. Can you do like 10 of them? Because if you actually use deliberate practice and you're very intent on using it, and you're then going to, and here's a big thing for y'all learning this, is you have to learn it and immediately apply it, or all the learning is lost, okay? And that's just the way we generally go. Like, how many times did you have to take a test in school? You had to learn these facts and learn these people and learn these dates, and you used it for the test, and then you never used it again, right? So art compounds itself in the same exact way. So if you learn a skill, if you get better at a practice, you have to immediately have an application for it, or it just dissipates. Did you ever fall into this trap of like having to create an insane amount of sketchbooks or an insane amount of this and that? Because if so, I just want to release you, friend. Instead, you will see much greater growth from deliberate practice rather than an absurd amount of practice. Time and focus are not equivalent. Focus always trumps time. Now, this next one is definitely a really heated and honestly not enough heavily debated topic. And it's about the fact that, tell me this, have you ever said that you need to take more breaks? Have you ever said to yourself, well, I'll do better when I break more, or maybe I'm putting in too much, or I'm not going hard enough, and I need to just slow it down, or I need to take it easy. You've ever heard anybody tell you that you'll do so much better when you're just taking a little bit slower than what you're currently doing? Well, I want to let you know that that's some of the worst, most toxic advice, and honestly, a lot of the breaks that you're taking aren't helping you, because if you're really focused on taking a break, let me just spell it out for you. The whole focus of that is for you to actually step away from what you're currently doing and allow your brain to actually recover. But that's not what you're taught to do, and that's not what you heard. And to oppose this, I made an entire video right here that's gonna teach you the right way to not break bad. So check it out, and if this helped you, please make sure that you share it with somebody that you know. Thanks so much, and see you next time.